Welcome to Slim Nation's One-on-One Pod.
Nope, wrong one. Well, welcome everyone to the Portsmouth Coffee Talks Evening Edition show. I'm James Slim Overton, and waiting on our other hosts, Leah Drake Stitt and Thomas the Colonel Chapman. But it's 7, a little after 7, so we're going to get started. Have a special guest, I have two special guests with us this evening, and one of them would be Carol Smith Turner. And hello, Carol, how are you?
Hey, James, how are you doing? I'm great.
Thanks for joining us for this important conversation tonight. And let me tell you a little bit about Carol. Well, one thing, I've been knowing her most of her life. She didn't know me when we at Norcom, I don't think, but I knew her because I was in school with someone she knows, with Ray. But anyway, Carol is, of course, a resident of Portsmouth, and she became a research participant in the EBMS head study. She is the first African American in the nation to participate in the head study to fight Alzheimer's. Carol is on the Alzheimer's Clinical Trial Consortium, which focuses on helping researchers better understand what's important and needed from a research participant's point of view. Also on the EBMS Head Study Community Advisory Board, reaching out to churches in the African American communities locally, letting them know the benefits and the importance of joining the study and others. Now, at this time, and as we talk about this, it's going to become important to realize how important the work that Carol is doing, especially in the African American communities. So, Carol, introduce our other special guest, if you will.
And that might be Dr. Akwabi, who is a geriatric medical director over in Norfolk at EVMS. He is serving as the medical director of their Comprehensive Memory Center. Very nice center over there, specializing in evaluating a range of cognitive disorders, primarily focused on exploring innovative clinical therapeutics for Alzheimer's disease and investigating novel treatments for neuropsychiatric symptoms in individuals with dementia. He also is a principal investigator for 22 ongoing research studies spanning pivotal clinical trials in both national and international fronts. Dr. Kwavi is also he heads the ACTC board that I'm on the program, and I'm just trying to read through some of this stuff. Also, he's a the Alzheimer's disease neuro imaging initiative and serves as a vanguard site PI for the Alzheimer's Association, ALZNet, National Registry, and has presented this work in multiple national and international venues. This guy does a lot, and he's all over the place.
It certainly sounds that way. And doctor, before you get started, and I know you're going to tell us about the origins of this disease, and I can remember growing up. I'm in my late 60s, and I remember growing up. I don't know if it had a name for this disease, but we all experienced people in our neighborhoods that experienced memory loss, and it was just one of those things. We said, we associated it with age. We associated with, they're getting a little older now. They're just repeating themselves, and we just dealt with it and know that they got to the point where we might have to lead them around by hand, And like I mentioned, we associated with age, and that's just something you did. But then as time went on, and you probably would tell us, more research went into it, and it developed a name for it, and reason and a cause and everything. So if you will, go ahead and tell us about the origins of it.
Sure. Well, Jim, thank you very much for having me on. This is quite exciting, and this is quite an honor to work with, of course, Carol. As you mentioned, Carol is the first African American participant in the entire nation in the AHEAD study. There are 75 American sites for the AHEAD study, and Carol is the first. So she is really like our celebrity, and we go in different places together, Purple Sundays specifically. And Carol talks about her experience, and I'm sure that she's going to do it, today as well. So it has been a fantastic and amazing experience for us, all of us, working with Carol as a team. So she is really now, as you mentioned, at the national level. She's in the advisory board at the Alzheimer's Clinical Trial Consortium nationwide. So what you mentioned about Alzheimer's, let me just give you a little bit of historical background. So the story started in the turning point of 20th century when there was a patient, a 51-year-old lady by the name of Augusta D, who developed some issues with memory and also some behavioral issues. So essentially, she got quite paranoid towards her husband, thought that her husband has some affair with her neighbor, and her memory issues got worse. And a German doctor by the name of Dr. Alzheimer started to take care of this patient. Dr. Alzheimer was a psychiatrist and a neurologist, started taking care of Augusta D. And in 1901, and for 5 years he took care of her until Augusta actually passed away. The reason that Augusta passed away because her memory got really worse, and then she was not able to walk, she was not able to eat or drink. She developed pneumonia, and then finally passed away due to Alzheimer's disease. When Augusta passed away, Dr. Alzheimer looked at her brain under the microscope and saw two proteins. And let me see if I can actually share now my screen. I don't know if my screen is right now being shared, James.
Is that what you wanted up there?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that shared now?
Yes, we can see it.
You can see that says facts you should absolutely know about Alzheimer's disease, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So first, I wanted just to show you what Dr. Alzheimer saw under the microscope. When he looked under the microscope of Augusta D's brain, saw these on the left-hand side, these misfolded proteins. He didn't know exactly what they are, but he called them plaques. And those are now, are amyloid plaques. And then he saw these tangles here, and he called them tangles. So essentially what happens in the brain of person with Alzheimer's disease, they start to build up these plaques in the brain. And then when these plaques are deposited in the brain, built up in the brain, it starts a cascade of events that will lead to development of these tangles. And these tangles
Okay,
are...
Dr. Quavi.
Yes.
Dr. Quavi, we're not seeing each individual screen, though. We're still
So
at
you don't-
facts you should have absolutely known.
Oh, really?
So
Because
James, is James supposed to be?
no, actually,
Yeah.
Is James supposed to be moving down?
I'm forwarding myself, so you can't see, right?
Right. And
No.
I
James
That's
is
can't.
good.
So then,
I can't pull.
Oh, you,
that's okay. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna actually just talk without showing slides. So you can't really see slides, correct?
well, we can see them, but they're not coming up individually as you're talking.
That's so. Right now, what do you see? Is it the slide with hallmarks of AD pathology?
Yeah, put it back, James.
I'm gonna go back to it.
And if you can't see, that's okay. I can explain.
Yeah, I think well, next time we'll
Yeah, sure. So let me just kind of stop
okay,
here.
we'll work
No,
on
no,
that next time.
that's okay. So essentially, there are two proteins that deposit in the brain. The first one is plaques. Those are made up of amyloid protein. And the amyloid protein, when they deposit in the brain, when they build up in the brain, they start a cascade of events that they develop those tangles. Our brain actually starts building up those tangles. And those tangles are toxic to our brain. And that's when we start to lose brain cells. And when we lose brain cells, people start having symptoms of memory loss. So that's what happens in a patient with Alzheimer's disease. Now, I also wanted just to talk about a couple of other issues as well, because people always ask, what is dementia and what is Alzheimer's, right? That's a very common question that people ask us. Well, so let me just kind of first talk a little bit about normal forgetfulness versus significance, something that is important. So all of us have noticed that sometimes we may make a wrong decision, right? So wrong judgment. That happens to everyone. How many times my wife actually tells me that, well, what you did was not really correct. That was silly, right? So that happens to all of us. Or, for example, if you're not really working, we may lose track of what day of the week it is. Or, for example, when we talk, we may forget what word we're going to use, tip of the tongue. So that's something that happens to all of us. But it doesn't really happen every day and all the time. It's just occasional, and it doesn't really progress. In patients with Alzheimer's, what happens is that they start to having more problem, mainly with short-term memory, and then this is progressive. So, for example, the patient with dementia. Well, let's just first talk about dementia. Patient with dementia start having trouble with memory. They may forget day of the week, but they may 10 times or 15 times in 1 hour ask, what day is today? What is the date today? Because they can't really retain that. Or now, instead of just having trouble with finding the word, now they can't really communicate. So that's getting really progressive. So dementia is when people have memory loss, and it's so significant that it can affect day-to-day function. Now people become dependent to other people. That's dementia. So for diagnosis of dementia, I don't need to do any MRI or any advanced imaging or any other test. I need the patient, I need the family member, I need a memory test, and I can determine if the patient has dementia or not. But dementia is the big umbrella. And under this umbrella, there are 400 different causes of dementia. And the most common one happens to be Alzheimer's disease, but there are other causes of dementia as well. For example, vascular dementia. That's another type of dementia, or frontotemporal lobe dementia, or Lewy body dementia. Those are different causes of dementia. 70% of people with dementia have Alzheimer's, and that's why Alzheimer's is so important to diagnose and, of course, treat. I'm going to stop here as much as kind of I explained about the Alzheimer's and dementia, and see if there is any questions so far, or if there is anything that I can probably clarify further.
Yeah, I'll say this, and I want Carl to get in there and talk about her experience. But I have to ask this question. A lot of people, see a lot of information about it on the internet or something, and they try to self-diagnose. They try to self-diagnose, and the thing about misplacing their keys or walking in a room, and then have to go backtrack and say, well, I forgot what I was coming in here for. And they try to say, I must have it, or something is going on. And I'm sure the advice would be the best way to do is to take that test or examination that you can take to find out go in your brain like you were explaining, and it's a tell sign of if you actually have it. And there is treatment for it, although no cure right now, but there is a treatment for it, and along with the study. And I'll go to you, Carol. You're part of the study, and what brought you to the study? Most of us have had personal experiences with people in our family or friends that we know that suffer from this disease, and it can be very devastating to a family to watch that, in real time happen to a loved
Exactly.
family member. So talk about your experience with it and what brought you to the study in the first place.
Well, that's exactly what happened. Don't know if you know that, but you may know it, James. My dad had dementia, Alzheimer's, and he passed in 2020. And just like you said, it's a very sad
Mhm.
disease because it affects people in ways that you've never seen them. They're totally out of themselves. And you got to really always understand that it is the disease that's basically taken over their brain. And that's basically what it does. So after my dad passed, my mom was starting to show some signs of that. And we were referred by her cardiologist to EVMS and Dr. Quavi's team, um, who were getting ready to launch the AHEAD study. What happened was my Ray and I were on the call when we got the results from mom, but mom couldn't take advantage of the study. But Dr. Quavi is her geriatric doctor. So what we wanted to do is um, make sure we
Mhm.
understood everything that was going on with her. And in the meantime, he mentioned the fact that there was a study, and it was a study that was between the ages of 55 and 80, which we fit into. So he asked if once it started to launch, if we would want to participate in it, and we both agreed to participate in it. I started before Ray did, and that's basically how this journey started with going over. Right now, I've been in the study for probably almost 2.5 years. It's a 4-year study. And what I basically do is every other week, when I started, every other week went over to EVMS Infusion Center. And so there is when I would get the medicine via IV, and we call it an infusion. And my infusion, every time I get it, it lasts an hour. The very first visit, it takes a little longer because they need to really observe you. And that's one thing about this team that makes you feel comfortable. All T's are crossed and all I's are dotted. They're so careful with what they do with us in that infusion center. They document everything. They make sure that they're checking on us. So the first visit was 4 hours. After that, it went from 1 hour to half an hour, and that's where I am now. But also, I'm at the once a month infusion stage now. So after the 2 years, it's every other year at 2 years. And in my third year, I go into once a month. And that's where I am now, going over once a month into the Fusion Center. But it doesn't only entail that, but we also, you heard Dr. Quavi mention MRIs and memory tests. So we periodically go through those as well consistently um, with his team over in the Glennon Center over across, or just across from the hospital. So they are very thorough at what they do, and they make sure that we are they're as open as we are to them. Basically, anything we have problems with, anything we want to ask, whether it seems off base to us, is not off base to them, which is very important when you're dealing with. So this is our first rodeo. I've never been in a study before, and didn't really have a problem with it because I knew the path that my father's family had taken. His two brothers passed with Alzheimer's, and sister. Also, he has two now that are living with the signs of dementia. So we ended up getting the genes from both parents. And I and the my amyloid you heard him mention the amyloid plaque as well, and I had a high level of amyloid plaque in my brain. So I'm really looking and hopefully looking at this trial to diminish, slow down, or miraculously even cure it as far as my amyloids are concerned. But I will not know until the 4 years up what my results really are, and I'm fine with that.
And I'm going to just actually piggyback on what Carol said about this study. But before that, I want to just get to the point that you made, James.
But doctor, I'm listening to her. I'm a transplant heart transplant recipient, so I know the importance of knowing your family history, and I guess that's so important here. I mean, and so many people in her family. I mean, that's that's definitely a sign. And it can, like a lot of diseases, skip generations where one generation nobody succumbs to it or gets it, and then it'd be like that almost a whole family of brothers and sisters come down with it. So with this study, I guess like most studies, I guess you all, and you explain very well, what causes it and what's going on with the brain and the reasons for it. So you all know that. So the study is and you can slow it down. But is this study to create medicines that can slow it down even longer, or for a cure? I know it's always that's the end road, to look for a cure for any disease. But what are you looking for as results from this study?
Yeah, so this is a very, very good question, and that's what I wanted really to make some additional comments on that. But before that, I really need to explain about the Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is like kind of a big iceberg that what we see here in our memory center when people come to us are people who have dementia, right? So they have memory loss. But there's a huge underwater part of this iceberg that is called preclinical Alzheimer's, meaning that these are people who don't have any memory loss. When we do the memory test, everything is blue ribbon normal, but they started to build up those plaques in the brain. And it takes about 15 to 20 years from the time that we start building up those plaques in our brain to the time that we develop symptoms like develop dementia. So the study that Carol is a prevention clinical trial. What it means that here we try to give the medicine when people start building up those plaques in the brain, but they don't have any symptoms, and we try to prevent Alzheimer's 20 years before symptoms appear. So that's really what this study about. Now, the medicine that we use here is a medicine that got FDA approval July of last year. And that medicine in patients who have dementia, early stage dementia, it has shown that it can slow down memory loss significantly. Now we think that by setting the clock back 15, 20 years, setting the clock back, we probably be able to have a bigger impact, or maybe even prevent, as Carol mentioned, prevent Alzheimer's disease. That's really the premise of this study. Now, I also need to say that nowadays we have powerful tools to diagnose Alzheimer's disease with very high accuracy. There is a PET scan that we have available, and we do in the study that Carol participated, and Carol mentioned that her amyloid level in the brain was high, amyloid plaques was high. So the way that we could detect Carol's amyloid plaques or other participants in the study is that we do a PET scan, and that PET scan, we can see those plaques in the brain. And if we see those plaques in the brain, 95% of time, this is Alzheimer's disease. So that's a very accurate test. 20 years before people even develop symptoms, when they start building up this plaque, we can see those plaques with this test in the brain. So that's what this study about. Giving the same medicine that in people with dementia, it has slowed down memory loss. We now set back 15, 20 years earlier, the same medication. It's a 4-year study. And the age, as Carol mentioned, between 50 to 85, and I'm sorry, 55 to 80. And these are people who don't have diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia. However, for some reason, for whatever reason, they are concerned about developing Alzheimer's disease in the future. For example, they have a family history of Alzheimer's disease, or they have the gene that increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease, or they have some other risk factors that increases the risk. And they agree to this 4-year commitment, and they need to have a study partner as well. And that study partner could be either a family member, like, spouses or children, or maybe a friend who knows people well. There's not really not that much of involvement of a study partner, as Carol probably can explain. Maybe a couple of times or 3 times per year, they need to come to the center to get some information from them. So now this study is right now available, but within the next 2 months, we we expect that the recruitment for the study will be finished very, very soon.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the age of starting at 50 or 55, because, at one time people might have called it old timers disease, and people don't even worry about it or think about it until they're, well advanced in their age. And most people in 50s are not going to think about, do I have this or should I be tested? So that's important to know that, especially if it's in your family history.
And absolutely, you made a very, very great point, James, because especially in African American population, I want to really share some information related to Alzheimer's in African American population. First of all, African Americans are up to twice as likely as non-Hispanic whites to develop Alzheimer's disease. So that's twice more common in African Americans. Yet, 40% of people with Alzheimer's disease, African Americans with Alzheimer's disease, they will never be diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. That's quite striking, especially now that we have a medicine that slows down memory loss. Time is really an asset. So the timely diagnosis is so important, because these kind of medications, they work at a certain time when it's early stage, when it actually passes certain point, it is really not, they don't really work. So to give you kind of an example, by 2030, which is just a few years down the road, right, 40% of patients with Alzheimer's disease will be African Americans or Latinos. That's how common it is. It is not really uncommon for us in our memory center to see an African American patient who hasn't been diagnosed even at the advanced stage of dementia. And as you said, sometimes it's a stigma, right? People don't really like to hear about dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And then the other time, people actually think that this is a normal aging process. It is not.
Right.
Alzheimer's is not a normal aging process, because it's very common when people get older, the frequency of Alzheimer's goes up. For example, if you take a look at people at the age of 60, just 1% of people will have Alzheimer's. By 65, 2%. Every 5 years, it actually doubles. By 74%, by 75, 8%. You just kind of, you can figure out. By the age of 90, 1 out of 2 people will have Alzheimer's, but that's not normal. And we can diagnose that now with high accuracy. So I just want also to share some information about some of probably your audience that they may have noticed some issues with memory, right? So when to seek medical advice. This is very important. There are certain red flags that are very important. For example, if someone notices some memory issues and the age is over the age of 60, that's very important. That's a red flag. If someone develops some subjective memory complaint, like noticing something is going on, and their spouses, for example, or their children or their friends also, they have some concerns. They have also noticed some changes. That becomes very, very important. If it stays there, if people start having some issues with memory and stays there, that's important. Because, for example, all of us, if we have a surgery or we are in hospital, you may actually feel a little bit foggy, right, for a while. but we get better. We get back to our wherever we were. But if it continues, that's important. If there's any family history of dementia or Alzheimer's and people notice some changes, that becomes very, very important as well. So these are all the red flags for someone to probably seek medical advice. And just being seen, for example, in a memory center like ours to come up with a diagnosis. Hopefully we will have kind of timely treatment. But Carol's situation is different. Carol doesn't really have, any symptoms. It's just try to, of course, participate in the study to advance the science. And also, hopefully, we don't know whether she's on medicine or not. There's a 50% chance to be on medicine, but to take advantage of that 50% as well, hopefully either slow down or...
I have two other questions for you, Doc, and I want to get back to Carol. I have a question for her as well. But you mentioned about the medication that's available now that slows it down. Now, is that process different for different patients that they take as far as how long it slows it down and how effective it can be? And I'll let you answer that, and then I'll come back with the next question because it's quite different.
Sure. Very, very good question. So these new medications, how effective they are, right? So in the study that they had over 1,700 participants, and that study actually showed it slows down significantly. What they found was there is a 27% slowing in memory loss. What does that mean? Because 27% to me means nothing. I mean, how can really I gauge that, right? Just to make it a little bit better for people to understand, the duration of the study was 18 months, and people who were on this medicine, they gained back 5.3 months within the 18 months. This medicine does not improve, does not stop. It slows down. So now what does it mean? Like, for example, 5.3 months of slowing down. I'll give you an example. For example, if someone who was not on medicine, that person could still drive by month 12. This person is not on medicine. By month 12, could not continue driving anymore. If that person was on medicine, could continue driving probably for another 5.3 months or 6 months, up to 18 months. Now, that's just within 18 months. We think that if the duration of treatment is longer, the effect of these medications are probably stronger. So within 18 months, that's 5.3 months you get back. But probably if that's going to be like 3 or 4 years of taking the medicine, or maybe 5 years, probably you're going to get maybe 1.5 years or 2 years back. And by the way, the time that you get back, it means quality time, right? Because what it means that's the time that you can still retain your skills of doing things that you like to do. Again, like driving, playing, I don't know, whatever, you play, right? Or managing your finances. So that's really quality time for most people.
Yeah. And the other question I had, if you know it's your family history, and say, for instance, all the medical and scientific things you mentioned that's going on in your brain with the onset of Alzheimer's, and you are active in sports and getting a lot of blows to your head, would that advance it, or is that a completely different medical situation?
Yeah, that's another great question. These are all interrelated. For example, people who played, of course, football, right? Or professional or non-professional before, or they had some traumatic brain injury, right? First of all, I want to really make sure that I explain what is important and what is not, what is considered as something important. So for example, for a trauma to the brain, in order to be important, people need to lose conscience, pass out for at least 30 minutes, or forget about what's going on, amnesia, for about at least 30 minutes.
That's a long time.
That's a long time, yes. Then that becomes important. If someone just hits, their head bang, their head when they are just getting out of the car, or
which I do.
Yeah, you have it.
Me
Well,
too.
yeah, I mean, all of us do, right? Or you may actually fall. And you don't even hit your head, but you don't really lose your consciousness, or you don't really, kind of get amnesia. It's not really that important. Now, for those people that they have significant trauma to their brain, as I explained, more than 30 minutes, then that in and of itself could cause traumatic brain injury, and that is a risk factor for dementia, developing dementia, and that's a one type of dementia. Remember that I said that there are 400 different causes of dementia, right? Alzheimer's is one of them, but there are other types as well. So traumatic encephalopathy, we call it chronic traumatic encephalopathy or traumatic encephalopathy. That's the one that traumatic brain injury can cause. So that's one type. But also, trauma to the brain can increase the risk of developing Alzheimer's in and of itself. So if someone has significant trauma to the brain, they can develop dementia due to that trauma or develop dementia because of Alzheimer's disease.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And Carol, I have to ask you first, how you been feeling? Because, when you mentioned about all those people in your family that actually had the disease or going towards it, wow, that's that's amazing. And the strange, the brain or the mind is is an amazing mechanism. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, especially with the imagination. And sometimes just knowing that, that's where the word hypochondriac comes from. People just knowing things and seeing things, and you can develop symptoms that are
Exactly.
really not there. I'm getting into a
Mm-hmm.
whole different field. You need to have a psychiatrist on here for that. But, that can happen, especially when you know so
That's
much,
true.
So
That's true.
so I guess it's a good thing you're in the study because you're getting the real deal. They're really checking out. But if other than that, somebody might see this show and say, "Wow, I
Mm-hmm.
lost my keys last night," and really be
Mm-hmm.
worried for nothing. But it doesn't. It's nothing wrong with getting tested anyway, because you never
Oh
know
no.
as soon as you see those signs. But
Mm-mm.
so, and talk about what you're doing and going around to the different churches and sort of making people aware. And it's a disease that a lot of people know about, but sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
you take things like that for granted. Like we mentioned earlier, doctor, about the age. People like it's old timers to
Right.
most people. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
they think, well, I don't have to worry about that until I'm in my 80s, and you could
Mm-hmm.
be 50 and have some serious
That's right.
concerns about that. So to talk about what you're doing and going around and the awareness and how you're being receptive.
Yeah. And that's the key. If you feel within yourself that you're not comfortable with things that you do or the way you think, that's right. That should tell you that you need to go and search out. And what we do is, James, by the contact of an individual at one of the African American, we, as a matter of fact, we've gone Virginia Beach, Newport News, Hampton. We've gone all over. Um, we call it Purple Sunday, and we are invited by one of the church members, and they have people sign up for it. We provide, well, EVMS provides them lunch. Um, and what we do is just what Dr. Quabi was trying to do here in reference to his slides. So he goes through the development of all the understanding, having them understand what the difference is where the umbrella is. Because I'm gonna tell you, until I start hanging out with this group, I had no idea that dementia was the umbrella. I thought it was Alzheimer's. I didn't have any idea there were like 400 different types of dementia. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
So a lot of people don't understand the differences in those words, and the team explains that very well, as well as an Alzheimer's person is there giving a presentation. Dr. Quavi also has a partner, and Dr. Nignajad, who actually talks about the study. But we go in and we make a presentation. Or and Dr. Gibson is there, who's one of the nurses. She's out of Norfolk State, and we also have Dr. Andrews in pharmaceutical over in Hampton. This is the team that we have together, and we go out to the different churches. Matter of fact, I think we have one this coming Sunday, I believe, We got to check on that, Dr. Quavi. But we go out and we make the presentation. Let me tell you, we went to South Hill. I didn't even know we were going. That's Ray's church. Jane, we had about 30 people signing up. We've had a large number of people signing up because they are basically concerned about either because they have their family members, they may be caregivers of someone who
Right.
has the disease. Okay. And that in itself is enough
That's
to
a
kind of make
whole
you
nother situation there. The caregivers.
Exactly. And the thing about it is I'm a caregiver also of 2 people and Ray's a caregiver of 1. So when you are even in that arena, you didn't need to kind of get yourself checked out. What better way to demonstrate the importance of this disease than to be right there in the room? And that's what I tell them all the time. You don't get doctors going around to you, coming to you with this kind of information. So you very well need to take advantage of it because it's available, but we are very well received. And that's what Dr. Quavi just mentioned. We needed to, get more because we're coming to the end of our study participant campaign. So, and it's very important that we go to our community because our community is the community that we're afraid, we don't trust nobody, but we'll go in the drugstore and pick up something and we'll put it in our mouth and digest it. A lot of people don't know, and I didn't even know that till I joined this team, that COVID, well, everything basically is a trial because they got to try it on people before they put it out for people to purchase. So COVID, we were part of a trial with COVID. And still some people didn't do that and still not taking the boosters or whatever. Whatever is out, this information, the medicine is out here for us to take advantage of. And a lot of Christians know that we're supposed to take care of our bodies. God gives these doctors the ability, the knowledge, the understanding of the whereabouts of how to help us take care of ourselves. And our brain, which runs our body, needs to be very well taken care of. But let me tell you this, and Dr. Quavi heard me mention this before. I was able to go to San Diego, California. And because I'm on the an advisory board in reference with the participants, which is another awesome thing. They are actually listening to participants, getting their feel of how things are working for them, how they can make things better for them. And this is what we did for about 3 days in San Diego. We were in our rooms with our boards and our markers, and we were actually submitting information for researchers to take a look at. And we even had the director of the research team in the room, and he is so gung-ho about getting to the bottom of this disease. I had to text Dr. Quavi because I'm like, this is blowing my mind. The stuff that he's talking about that they're looking at, the research that they're doing, James, is unbelievable. I mean, this is the stuff that's going on in the background that a lot of people don't know. And I was just very blessed and I was very humbled to even be able to be a part of that. But it's very important that we take this stuff for granted. Our community has to, because it's killing us. It's killing us.
Yeah, and it's a sad thing to witness, and I'm glad that you go to the churches and when you get to religions, and we've talked about this on this show with other diseases like heart disease, heart failure, that it's good to pray, but and Carol, we go to the same church, and our pastor, Dr. Mariner, will tell you in a minute. Pray,
yes, he will.
But get that medical advice, and that combination works miracles. You can't
exactly
pray something away. So it's important to go to those people and out into the communities as well. So I appreciate what you're doing there, and you as well, Doctor. We hinted on, and we're winding down there, but we hinted on the caretakers. It can be a long haul. that development, that evolution of the disease can take a long time. I saw a video where a doctor followed this couple, and it was like a 6-year journey. And each
Yeah.
time he came back, each year or every 2 years, you could see. But that was
Mhm.
every 2 years. But that caretaker was seeing that slowly happen, in front of his
Mhm.
eyes until, and you've heard others, caretakers say, once sometimes they get to the point where they have to go to a nursing home because they can't take it. And they'll tell you that's not the person, that's not the same
Right.
person.
That's
And
right.
that in reality is not, you know.
Well, you know what, James? That happened with my dad because my mom really fought, us in reference to placing him, and he got to a point where we really had to. We didn't have a choice. Unfortunately, it was during the pandemic, which made it
Yeah.
even worse and even sadder. Because he couldn't understand why we couldn't come in there while we were at the window. He couldn't understand that, and I'm gonna tell you, I prayed. I really prayed hard for the Lord to take my dad out of that because it is sad, and that wasn't the dad I know. So you're right. It's something to really really think about, and I know I don't want to go that route. So I'm gonna do whatever I do. I exercise. I love line. Anybody tell you I love line dance? I love, do a lot of line dancing. I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of games. I do a lot of things. I try to eat right. Now I haven't gotten quite there yet, but I do try to eat right, and I think about the things that I do eat. But those are some of the things too that you can personally do to help your brain. Doc, you can elaborate more on that.
Sure, sure. That's another thing, just, kind of how can you slash the risk for Alzheimer's disease? That's quite important. There are definitely lots of strategies. First of all, the risk factors, all of the cardiovascular risk factors, for example, blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, smoking, those are risk factors for Alzheimer's as well, for dementia as well. But some other risk factors that we never actually think about, hearing loss. Hearing loss is a risk factor for developing dementia. This is something that we've recently learned, and that's easy to treat. Untreated hearing loss increases the risk of Alzheimer's. The other thing is sleep apnea. People who have sleep apnea and they're not treated with CPAP machine, their risk of developing memory loss and dementia goes up significantly. So essentially, if you want to really help your brain, you probably needs to take care of your heart, right? So that's the most
Mhm.
important part. And as Carol mentioned, you know, using your brain, doing some, for example, brain games, participating in social activities, just trying to really engage yourself as much as you can, that's very helpful. The other important one, of course, exercise. And people usually ask how much. Well, the minimum will be 150 minutes per week. That's the minimum. But probably the optimal, based on quite a few different studies, especially one of them, if you can walk 7,000 steps per day, which is about 3 miles for me, 3.5 miles for me, then that's probably the optimal dose of exercise to help your brain. That's very, very important. So those are really the things that you can do. And now, in terms of risk factors, I just wanted to mention something. For example, if someone has diabetes, that increases the risk of dementia by 1.5 folds compared to someone who doesn't have diabetes. If that person has diabetes and high blood pressure, that increases the risk by 3 times. If that person has diabetes and hypertension and now smokes, that increases the risk by 14 times. So it's like kind of multiplied by, right? So
Mhm.
it's very important to slash as many risks as you can. So age is the strongest risk factor. We can't really change it. Family history is one of the risk factors. We can't change it. We can't really change our parents, right? But there are other things that we
Right.
can do to help ourselves. And those ones that I mentioned is really, really important. The other thing is, really educational attainment. and by educational attainment, I don't really mean to like go and just get your PhD. No. But if you, go and just, for like a college, course or something to engage, age doesn't matter. At age of 60, 65, 70, 75, that helps to slash the risk for Alzheimer's and dementia.
And so much information at the tip of your fingers that you can tap into.
It
Used to
is.
be this song we used to sing when we were little kids. The toe bone connects to the foot bone connects
Yeah.
to the leg bone. So that's just saying everything in our body is connected, and protecting
That's right.
one thing can be protecting another. So we just have to be conscious of what we do, our lifestyle, so I think any one of these diseases that we can talk about, nobody wants to get, but I can imagine this. I saw a video the other night of a lady. I think she was in early stages because she would go and come, but to go and into the bathroom and look in the mirror and not recognize yourself, and
Yeah.
then come back and realize you did that. I guess if you were at the point you didn't recognize yourself and it went on, but to have that period and then come back to, I'll say, reality and realize that's what happened. Wow, that has to be a toll on you. I went in the bathroom and didn't recognize myself looking in the mirror. So, I mean, and that just tells you how devastating this disease can be. But there's hope on the horizon. There are things you can do to prolong it, or to, prolong it, or and at some point it might be a cure, just like a lot of diseases out here that they thought would never be cured. So
Yeah,
there's
and
hope.
one thing that I wanted to mention, this study, this is a prevention clinical trial, and the result will come probably 4 years from now, 4 to 5 years from now. At that time, we may very well have a medicine approved for prevention. So at that time, probably everyone at the age of like 55 or 60 will have the amyloid PET imaging. And if they have plaques in the brain, still they don't have any memory loss, then they can go on this medicine. So essentially the study that right now Carol is participating, this study 4 years from now, we will have the result. There is a good possibility that we will have some good treatment. Now, I know that one of your audience here, there's a question on the chat. I don't know, James, if you want to just us to answer that question as well. I think Ms. Bryant asked, how is dementia treated?
Yes.
So just a few words on that. Dementia, as I mentioned, that's a big umbrella. So dementia, the way that we treat dementia is to know what the cause of dementia is. Now, we have treatment for Alzheimer's disease, and we have treatment for some other types of dementia. For example, Lewy body dementia, we have treatment. For vascular dementia, we definitely treat the vascular causes. So it all depends on what type of dementia we have. And then, if treatment is available. For some of them, there is no treatment available, unfortunately, yet. But for some of them, we do have treatment. But no matter what type of dementia is, the things that I mentioned about the vascular issues, blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, smoking, those are all important for all different types of dementia. Hearing loss, important. Sleep apnea, important. So those are the ways that we treat patients with dementia.
Yeah, if those issues come up with you, make sure you check it out. And even if, like we were talking earlier, Carol, even if it's you think it's just in your mind, it's worth checking out, because
that's right.
sometimes we can be so filled with information, we can think, oh, I have all of that, but it might not be the case. So just finding out
And you know what?
Is something. Go ahead, Carol.
Another excuse me, James, another thing that I wanted to mention is, you don't think you can go to your doctor and get an amyloid PET scan, because it's not going to happen. Do you know how much an amyloid PET scan costs? $10,000.
Yeah, I heard it
you
was.
Come through the study, get yourself checked out, and you don't pay in the study, but you're not going to be able to get an amyloid PET scan through your PC, your primary care.
And besides helping yourself,
Come on, Joe.
Think about how many people you will help. So tell us tell the people, I think you said you were at the end of it as far as getting participants. So tell people how they can become a participant or be a part of the study.
Carol, go ahead.
No, you probably have them in from. I
Okay.
I was going to
Sure.
get extra.
Sure. Well, what we can do, James, with you, we can give you the QR code and also probably our website that people can contact our research coordinator and then ask for the study. So I think that probably will be the best way. We will provide that to you, and then maybe you can kind of put it on the website.
Yeah, please do, and I'll make sure it gets out there.
Yeah, and there's really no, of course, force to join the study. So you can just call to get information, and we will provide all the information for you. Make sure that again, the requirement age of 55 to 80, that's the main one, and not being diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. People would be probably eligible for for the study. One more thing that I wanted just to share with you: why is it important, really, participation of all different races and ethnicities? There was a study that, based on that study, aducanumab, the first medication, got approved in 2021 for Alzheimer's disease, similar to the one that just got the approval last year. In that study, there were more than 3,200 participants. 3,200 participants in the study. The number of African American participants in that study was just only 19. 0.6%. What it means that we have no idea if that medicine really works for African Americans,
right?
What the side effects are for African Americans. So we really need participation from everyone, every walk of life, different ethnicities, to be able to develop medications that we know that they work for everyone. And that's what we're really trying to do right now with the study right now that Carol is in. That's why we go to different places to be able to communicate and do the outreach program and do the education.
Okay, well, wow, great information. And just out of curiosity, doctor, what's the youngest case have you seen?
In our memory center, we have even people as young as 24 years. That's probably my youngest one. Those are people mainly with, for example, HIV that they have. But Alzheimer's, probably my youngest patient with Alzheimer's is actually 52 right now.
Okay, yeah, I asked that for a reason. Like we talked earlier, people, don't think it as a old person disease. It could come sooner than you think, and it's a long process. I really appreciate you all coming on and sharing the information. And
Hi, Leo.
Hello there, and so sorry that I missed the show. However, I will go back and look at it. We had some friends who were being honored tonight by the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce, and I really would encourage all the listeners out there to share this information with their family and friends, because a lot of our families have been touched by Alzheimer's, and we need to get all the information that we can get. And Miss Smith Turner, thank you so very much for bringing this to our attention and sharing this with the community, because it's very prevalent in our community now. So I want to thank you and the doctor. Thank both of you all so very much for all that you do.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for the comment. We appreciate it. And by the way, Carol is absolutely wonderful. She is our celebrity.
Please, doctor, don't do that, because I have to work with her for the remainder of the year, okay?
Dr. Kwabi, Leah is the president of our high school alumni association. So.
Wow, good to meet you, Leah.
Both of them are very involved. And Leah, you get a chance, because we're gonna, this is going to be something that we're going to bring back, because the study is still going on. So there'll be updates for us, and also if the doctor willing to just come back periodically and share the same information, because some people that didn't see it tonight might not ever see it, but it's going to be on YouTube forever for people to see. But we just want to make sure we get the information out for people, the right information out, because a lot of times, things can spread,
A lot of
and
misinformation. There's a lot of misinformation in the community.
right,
So we have to
and
get
that's
the
in
right
everything.
information out there. That's
And
for
this is
sure.
one disease you don't want to have misinformation.
Exactly.
You want to know exactly where you stand with it, and what kind of treatment you might need for it. Like you said, Doctor, there is treatment out there for it to prolong the symptoms and things like that. But the reason for the study is we're looking for a cure one day, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And thanks again. We appreciate it. And I'll give you at this time, do you have any last statements before we go off? And I appreciate, I feel like we've developed a relationship here, and I mentioned my health situation. So all these kind of diseases and health issues that we have, especially in the African-American communities, are very important to Portsmouth Coffee Talk as far as sharing information and make sure people get the right information. So if you have any last comments, you have it.
Carol?
But the only thing I like to say is with the information that we're going to give James, or give the Coffee Talk group, make sure you call, even if you have a question, even if you are skeptical about some things, or some things that you don't understand that's going on with you mentally. Look up that information, go to the website and contact the coordinators so that they can actually answer whatever questions that you have and give you clarity in reference to what you don't understand and would like to get to the bottom of.
And give that website one more time, whoever has it.
Oh, it's www.headstudy.org. Okay,
you all heard it. Make sure you get involved. And again, thanks a lot, and we appreciate it. And Leah, tell the Collins I said congratulations to them for their being recognized.
I certainly will. They've given so much to the community.
Yes,
I could
indeed.
not go without being there while they were being honored tonight. So I would definitely give them your regards. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And Carol, give my regards to your mother.
Okay, sure will. I think the doctor has something else to say.
I just wanted to say a couple of words that,
sure,
as Carol mentioned, I think don't be afraid. Information is always good. That's, knowledge is the power. So try to get as much as you can, so then you can, make an insightful decision in anything, right? Definitely in the science, for sure, that's all about knowledge. So Alzheimer's is really like a tsunami that hits our community, but it's like a tsunami that it really hits us every day. I see that in our memory center. I see how it really affects the impact in our patients and caregivers and families. It's just heartbreaking when you see that. As you mentioned, the people are not really themselves. It really changes, it steals really the person inside. And I think we are really in a fight against Alzheimer's, and we will really find a treatment. We're working right now, and we're not really that far, especially right now with the treatment that got the FDA approval for the AHEAD study right now for prevention. This is very promising, and hopefully we will have something very, very soon. So then hopefully in the future, our children, they don't even know what Alzheimer's is. So that's
right.
Really the goal.
Right. As they aged into those ages that we're concerned about. Yeah. Again, thank you very much. And I'd like to say to the audience watching, please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share this with everybody you know. We'll see you next time, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks to both of you. Thank you so very much. Thank you, James.
Thank you.